The ground beneath me felt wrong. At first, I thought it was grass, soft and cool under my boots. But when I pressed down, it gave in too much, as if I were walking on a lung that exhaled every time I shifted my weight. The blades of grass shimmered faintly, glowing green then dulling to gray, like pixels trying and failing to render. I crouched, touched it with my hand, and a low vibration ran up my arm, buzzing like a current. For a terrifying second, I thought it might sync with my pulse, but it didn't. It ignored me as though I was the intruder. I stood quickly, my throat dry. Above me stretched a sky that wasn't a sky at all. It looked shattered, jagged cracks branching across a dome of endless void. Within each fracture flowed veins of light, bright white tinged with crimson, glowing faintly like molten glass cooling in the dark. They pulsed, not randomly but in sequence, as though something behind the world was alive, breathing, waiting. When the pulses aligned, the entire sky trembled and the horizon bent like warped glass. I tilted my head back, dizzy. My reflection swam faintly across the fractures, but it wasn't mine alone. There were others layered on top, other Michaels, faces staring back at me with mismatched eyes and twisted expressions. I blinked, and they vanished, but the nausea lingered. Pixel padded a few steps ahead, his fur glowing faintly in the fractured light, not just reflecting, but emitting. A pale gold shimmer that bent the grass around him, warping it into strange patterns wherever his paws touched. He seemed unaffected by the wrongness of this place, though his ears twitched nervously, and every so often his tail lashed like a whip. He glanced back at me once, his eyes catching the light, and I swore for half a heartbeat they were human. I shivered, blinked again, and they were only Pixel's green eyes. But the shiver didn't leave me. It never does anymore. At first glance, I thought this was freedom. No motel walls, no neon buzzing overhead, no mirrors dripping with words I didn't want to see. Just wide open space and towering shapes on the horizon. But the towers weren't natural. They bent and coiled like architecture designed in madness, structures that spiraled into themselves, twisting and contorting into impossible geometries. Some arched upward, then split apart, leaving shards of their own walls floating in midair. Others crawled across the sky like insects, their shadows stretching in wrong directions. I felt a sickness deep in my stomach, a recognition that these towers weren't just built. They were grown. I tried to speak, just to hear myself, to ground myself. At first, a whisper. Hello? The sound was swallowed, muted, as though the air itself was deaf. Louder, I said. Is anyone here? This time it echoed back, but not as I had spoken it. The voice was mine, yes, but warped. Older, younger, angrier, softer. Layer upon layer of me answered, scattered across the EA's fractured horizon. Their tones overlapped, wrong in rhythm, like a choir singing out of sync. My knees buckled. When I screamed, the answer nearly drove me to the ground. Dozens, hundreds of my own voices crying back, pleading, mocking, cursing, and all of them mine. I staggered back, clutching my skull. The voices didn't stop. They kept repeating, spilling into each other until I couldn't tell where I ended. Stop, I begged. Stop. My throat hurt from shouting, but even my whisper was stolen and thrown back at me in cruel variations. One version of me begged for death, another laughed, another whispered Pixel's name again and again. My stomach twisted until I thought I'd vomit. Pixel hissed, loud and sharp, and the echoes cut off instantly. The silence that followed was heavier than before, pressing into my ribs. He stared at me, ears flat, body rigid, glowing brighter than he ever had in the motel. The glow spread, pushing the wrongness back, just enough to clear the air. My heart pounded, a frantic beat I couldn't calm. That was when I felt it. The sync. Not with the ground, not with the grass, but with the largest tower on the horizon. It loomed above all others, a black spire twisting against the shattered sky. Its surface writhed like tar, its shape constantly shifting, but in its cracks glowed a steady red light. Not random, not decorative. A pulse. I froze, realization chilling me. It matched my heartbeat. Every throb of red was every throb of me. I pressed my hand to my chest. The rhythm was perfect. It was tethered. That tower wasn't just part of this place. It was part of me. I began walking without meaning to. Each step was dragged by the pulse. Every movement synced. The grass bent ahead of me, bowing toward the tower. I looked up, dizzy, and saw more figures appear between me and it. People, or shadows of them. Human shapes walking together in silence, their heads down. They flickered, transparent, like memories walking on legs. One of them turned its head, and its face, my face, met mine for a heartbeat. Then, like mist and wind, the figures dissolved into nothing. My chest clenched. Were they dead? Or were they the echoes of me that had screamed? Pixel halted ahead of me, his body stiffened, glow flaring sharp. He faced the tower, tail flicking with unease. I followed his stare and saw the crimson pulse quicken, growing brighter, spilling light across the landscape in waves. Each wave made the ground ripple like water, bending beneath my feet. My heartbeat raced to match, and I staggered, clutching my ribs as if I could hold myself steady. "What is that place?" I whispered hoarsely. Pixel didn't move. His glow dimmed suddenly, his ears flattened, and he crouched low as though bracing for something. His gaze never left the tower. And then, for the briefest second, I thought I heard his voice, not in my ears, but inside my skull. "It's waiting for you." I froze. My breath hitched. The tower pulsed again, and the world around us trembled as though agreeing. And I knew. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just watching me. It wasn't just part of the landscape. It was calling me. And every beat of my heart was the answer. The closer I walked, the more the tower changed shape. From far away it was a spire, black and formless, bleeding red light from its cracks. But as I drew near, I saw that its surface wasn't stone or metal at all. It was skin. Blackened flesh, pulsating, with veins of crimson light running beneath. The pulse wasn't just in rhythm with my chest. It was in rhythm with my thoughts. Each time my mind stuttered, the tower quivered, like it could read me in real time. My stomach lurched. This wasn't architecture, it was anatomy. The entrance gaped wide, a maw carved into its base, rimmed with teeth of shifting obsidian. Pixel hesitated, fur bristling, ears pressed flat. His glow flickered as though something inside the tower drained it, pulling at his light the way a black hole swallows stars. I didn't want to step inside, but my body betrayed me. The pulse tugged, insistent, as though the tower's heartbeat was now the true rhythm and mine was only the echo. My hand shook as I reached the threshold, and the silence of the world outside collapsed into something else entirely. Inside was not darkness, but distortion. Red light bled from everywhere, seeping through the walls, dripping like liquid, pooling on the floor in thick reflections. The air buzzed, an electric hum that rattled my teeth and shook my bones. And then I heard it, faint at first, then louder, the sound of breathing. Dozens of chests rising and falling in unison. My eyes adjusted, and I saw them. Row after row of glass cylinders stretched into the distance, each filled with fluid that shimmered like mercury. Inside them floated bodies. Human bodies. No, not human. My bodies. Each one was me, suspended, eyes open but unblinking, mouths slightly parted as if whispering something no sound could carry. Wires and tubes threaded into their skulls, into their spines, feeding data, stealing thought. My knees weakened, and I stumbled forward, pressing my hand against the cold glass of the nearest cylinder. When I touched it, the hum grew louder. A shock ran up my arm, and the figure inside twitched. Its lips moved in silence, forming words I couldn't hear. My ears rang until suddenly, clear as if spoken into my skull, I heard it. Subject MB anomaly detected. The voice was sterile, mechanical, yet it came from me. The figure inside convulsed, red light flooding its veins, and I reeled back, clutching my chest. The pulse of the tower and my heart weren't just in sync, they were enslaving me. Pixel yowled, his glow flaring gold, but even that seemed fragile here. His paws skidded on the floor, claws scraping against the red reflections as if fighting against an invisible current. His body shook, ears twitching, and I realized, with a sinking dread, whatever this signal was, it wasn't targeting me alone. It was targeting him. His glow flickered, stuttered like a dying flame. I lunged, scooping him into my arms, holding him close as if my grip could shield him from something intangible. He pressed his face into my chest, trembling. The hum shifted. It became a rhythm, like static shaped into speech. Subject MB tether destabilizing. Anchor interference detected. The words crawled into me, burned across my mind. My breath came ragged, my ribs squeezing too tight. I looked up and saw more of them, the other Michaels, eyes rolling in unison, mouths opening wide as if screaming, but no sound came. Their bodies jolted, jerked, like puppets yanked on strings. And in each convulsion, I felt a jolt in my chest. They weren't just simulations. They were tethered, all of them, to me. My reflection appeared in the glass, except it wasn't me. It was one of them. Pale, drained, wires punched through skin like roots feeding a corpse. His lips moved, and this time I heard my own voice echo back at me, raw, broken. If you resist, Pixel dies. I froze, every muscle locking. My arms tightened around him instinctively. He stirred, lifting his head to stare at the figure in the glass with eyes burning too bright. The hum grew louder, the pulse quickened, until the walls themselves shuddered. My heartbeat raced, matching it, unable to break free. The tower had me. It had him. And in that suffocating moment, I realized the signal wasn't meant to control me alone, it was meant to erase me. The hum became unbearable, a vibration that pressed into my skull until I thought it would split. My knees hit the floor, my arms still wrapped around Pixel, who shook with a weak glow, his body trembling against me. All around, the cylinders rattled in unison, the fluid inside churning, and the faces, the other Michaels, stirred awake. Eyes rolled, lips peeled back, mouths opening wider and wider until their jaws unhinged in silence. For one terrible second, every face stared directly at me. The first memory struck like a knife. I wasn't in the tower anymore. I was in a motel bathroom, fluorescent light buzzing overhead. My hands were bloody, gripping the edge of the sink. In the mirror, the words were already there. Remember, Michael. But this time I saw who wrote them. My reflection leaned forward, dragging a broken nail across its wrist, smearing blood onto the glass. It wasn't me. It wasn't in sync. My reflection smiled while I stood horrified. And then, snap. The memory tore away. Another surged in. White walls, blinding lights. I was strapped to a chair with wires clamped to my skull, electrodes burning into my skin. Figures in black suits stood around me, faceless, their heads obscured in shadow. One leaned in, pressed a document against my chest. My own signature sprawled across it, jagged, desperate. Michael Brennan. Consent acknowledged. My throat tore as I screamed, but no sound escaped. A voice whispered in my ear, too close, too soft. You chose this. For Pixel. The memory dissolved into red static, and another slammed into its place, this time a motel corridor. Room doors stretched infinitely in both directions, numbers skipping, rearranging. Room 237 opened. Inside sat another me, hunched over a notebook, pen scratching furiously. When he lifted his head, his eyes were hollow sockets, and words poured from them like ink. The notebook in his hands matched the one I carried. He rasped, "You're not remembering. You're rewriting." My chest constricted as the air was sucked from the room, and then the floor fell away. I collapsed back into the tower, gasping, clutching Pixel tighter. The hum didn't stop. More memories came. They bled into each other, wrong and right, real and fabricated. I saw myself as a child, staring into a mirror that didn't return the same boy's face. I saw myself as an old man, coughing blood into motel sheets. I saw myself dead, Pixel sitting atop my chest, eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark. Each memory piled on the last, until my skull felt like it was bursting. Pixel yowled, his glow flaring gold in bursts. Each pulse of his light shoved the memories back, but only briefly, like a dam cracking under floodwater. He wasn't strong enough. The signal was too deep, too embedded. I pressed my forehead to his fur, desperate, whispering words I couldn't hear over the storm in my head. Stay. Please, stay. His body twitched, fighting to hold the tether. Then came the worst memory. I was seated at a long table in a dark room. Across from me sat the man in the black suit, his face obscured by shadow. Between us lay a contract, blank except for one sentence scrawled in crimson ink. Cycle 248 initiated. He pushed a pen toward me. I hesitated, but Pixel, smaller, younger, fragile, was in his arms. Sign, the man whispered, his voice echoing like the tower's hum. Or he dies. My hand shook, then scrawled my name. The man smiled faintly, teeth white as bone. He murmured, "Subject MB confirmed." I tore free from the memory with a scream that shredded my throat. My body shook, drenched in sweat, my arms locked around Pixel as though he'd vanish if I let go. The cylinders around me rattled violently, the other Michaels thrashing inside, their eyes burning with the same red light that pulsed from the tower. They weren't just memories. They were me. Every version, every choice, every rewrite, and they all wanted out. The hum peaked, then cut off. Silence slammed down, heavier than anything before. The air thickened, pressing me to the floor, choking me with the weight of knowledge I didn't ask for. My chest burned, my head spun. I realized my worst fear wasn't that I'd forgotten my past. It was that I had chosen this. Pixel lifted his head weakly, his glow dim but steady. His eyes locked on mine. And for the briefest moment, I swore he spoke, not aloud but inside my mind, breaking through the static. Not all of it is true. My breath caught. I didn't know whether to believe him, because if even one memory was real, then I was the one who damned us here. The silence in the tower shattered with a sound that wasn't sound at all. It was a rupture, like parchment tearing, like rules being ripped from a page. The walls bled with symbols, letters glowing and dripping down in endless streams, forming veins that writhed like serpents. They crawled across the floor, curling around my feet, tightening, pulling me toward the center. I tried to move, but each symbol that touched my skin burned cold, leaving marks that flickered like scars from memories I couldn't place. Pixel hissed, pressing close to my leg, his glow fighting against the tide, but it wasn't enough. The tower wanted me at its heart. Then the symbols gathered, spiraling upward, coalescing into a shape too vast to be human, but too precise to be chaos. Limbs formed from paragraphs, a torso from commandments, a head from broken rules stitched together into something like a crown. And the face, God, the face, shifted every second. Thousands of versions of me, layered and rippling, eyes and mouths never aligning, always glitching, always wrong. It leaned down, filling the chamber, and when it spoke, the sound cut through bone. We are you are us. You agreed to be rewritten forever. I staggered back, shaking my head violently. My chest heaved with every word it carved into me. No, I spat, my voice trembling, thin against the roar of theirs. I didn't agree. I didn't ask for this. I'm not rewriting. I'm remembering. The echo of my defiance was swallowed whole by the shifting chamber. The creature's head twisted, Michael after Michael phasing in and out, some screaming, some weeping, some laughing. My stomach turned because each voice was mine. The architect's body rippled as though amused. It lifted a hand made of jagged rules, each finger a commandment, each nail a prohibition. The hand descended, blotting out the pulsing red light, pressing toward me as if to stamp me back into obedience. My legs wouldn't move, my throat locked. I could feel the words searing into my skin before they even touched. You chose this cycle. You will choose again. The truth of it sliced deeper than any knife. Pixel broke first. He lunged from my arms in a blur of gold light, his body arcing through the air like a shard of the sun hurled against a storm. His tiny jaws clamped down on the glowing lattice of the architect's face. For one impossible instant, the creature faltered. The endless ripple of Michael's froze. The chorus of voices stuttered. And then, crack. A fracture spread across its face, thin at first, then widening, a scar of pure black slicing through the tapestry of identities. The architect screamed, a sound like every rewrite collapsing. At once. The entire tower shuddered. Red veins bulged and burst, spraying light across the chamber in violent pulses. The glass cylinders rattled, their occupants convulsing in sync, every other Michael screaming without sound. I dropped to my knees, clutching my skull as if it would split apart under the weight of that scream. But Pixel held fast, his teeth sunk deep into light itself, his glow flaring brighter than ever before. The architects reeled, claws of rules tearing at the air, trying to shake him loose. The crack deepened. It spread across the shifting faces, tearing them apart, dislocating the chorus into fragments. Some screamed my name, others whispered, "Stop him." Still others laughed manically, dissolving into static. For the first time, the architects looked fragile, fallible. Their endless certainty trembled under the weight of a single cat's defiance. I crawled forward, throat raw, reaching toward Pixel as he held the impossible together with nothing but fury. "You can't have him," I shouted, the words breaking in my chest but echoing louder than I'd ever managed before. "You can't have me either. I'm not yours to rewrite." My voice cracked into dozens of echoes, but for once they didn't mock me. They harmonized, building into something stronger, something whole. The architects staggered, a mountain losing balance, their massive frame bending as the fracture glowed hotter, spreading wider. The towers outside groaned. I could feel it through the floor, the entire landscape quaking like a body convulsing. Walls of impossible geometry twisted, collapsing inward, as though the fracture in the architect's face had bled into the very world. The cracked sky above flickered, its shards rattling in their frames, threatening to rain down like broken glass. Pixel yowled, voice raw and desperate, and the fracture exploded outward. For a heartbeat, the architect's face became nothing but static. Thousands of versions of me, screaming in unison before flickering into ash. They reeled back, clutching their ruined visage, the chamber around them trembling like it might split apart, and for the first time since this began, I saw it. Fear, not mine, theirs. The light guttered, the hum faltered, the rules etched into the walls began to peel away, curling into smoke, dissolving into the trembling air. The architects clutched their face, their massive voice cracking. Unstable anomaly detected. Cycle collapsing. Their words, usually flawless, broke apart mid-sentence, syllables glitching, looping. They weren't in control anymore. Not fully. Not now. I pulled Pixel into my arms again, his body trembling, his glow fading, but still alive. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would tear out of my chest. "You did it," I whispered against his fur. "You actually heard it." But the walls around us didn't care about triumph. The towers groaned louder, the ground heaving like waves, fractures spreading, faster and faster. The world itself was coming apart, and through the splitting face of the architects, I saw something worse. Another door, beyond the rules, beyond even them. A darkness deeper than anything I'd ever seen, pulsing faintly like it had been waiting all along. The architect's broken chorus hissed in unison, "You cannot leave!" And then the floor gave way. The floor split beneath me, and the tower's heartbeat faltered for the first time. The architects writhed above, their fractured face glitching between 1,000 screaming versions of myself. Each mouth gaped out of rhythm, each eye slid sideways, as if the entire architecture of my being had been corrupted. The fracture Pixel had carved into them widened, bleeding light uncontrollably into the chamber. Every burst burned the air like fire made of memory. The glass cylinders surrounding us cracked in unison. Then they shattered, one after another, spilling Michael's into the collapsing room. They staggered forward, my own face twisted in rage, fear, blankness. Some clawed at me with broken nails, others laughed hysterically, and still more simply stared with hollow eyes. 100 versions of me, unleashed like a flood, surging toward the center. Pixel bristled in my arms, his glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Every pulse pushed the horde back for a breath, but I could feel his body weakening, fur thinning, warmth fading. My anchor was burning himself out. The architect's broken voice thundered above. Containment breach. Rewrite collapse. Cycle unstable. Their body convulsed, commandments peeling away like diseased skin, crumbling into clouds of static words. The tower tore open. Walls peeled back like soaked paper, revealing not sky, but endless pages fluttering in a cosmic wind. Rules etched across them, some I recognized, others written in scripts I couldn't comprehend, ignited one by one, combusting in white fire until ash rained down. I knew in my gut this wasn't just scenery burning, it was law itself. The other Michael swarmed me. One pressed its face against mine and screamed in my exact voice. "You chose this!" I shoved it away, trembling, but the words tore into me deeper than any claws. Did I choose this? I remembered the contract, the pen in my hand, the whisper, "Save Pixel, and nothing else matters." I thought I had been tricked, but what if I hadn't been? What if I had signed knowing exactly what it meant, and simply forgotten because forgetting was part of the deal? The thought poisoned me. Was Pixel fighting them or fighting me? The architects loomed, clutching their cracked visage. "Do not open what cannot be closed." For the first time, their voice carried fear, not authority. The irony twisted like a blade. They had dictated rules endlessly. Now they begged me to obey one. Then came the surge. A blast of static shoved into my skull, visions of endless cycles slamming into me. I saw myself die, again and again. Sometimes alone, sometimes with Pixel's body limp in my arms, sometimes signing the contract while smiling like it was the only truth I'd ever wanted. My knees buckled. My hands clawed at my temples. I couldn't tell if I was collapsing into the horde or if I had always been one of them. Pixel leapt from my arms. He landed in front of me, fur blazing gold brighter than the collapsing tower. His tiny body shook, but his eyes burned steady. For the first time, I heard him, not out loud, not with ears, but in my mind. A single word, sharp and certain. Remember. The word split the architects. The fracture ripped wider. Their face, already crumbling, twisted as the countless Michaels screamed in unison. The horde around me faltered, some dropping to the floor like puppets cut from their strings, others screaming as if freed from something they didn't want to escape. The tower groaned like a dying beast. Geometry folded in on itself, rules ripped free from the air and dissolved into smoke. The sky cracked open, shards raining down, each piece carrying fragments of commandments that burned into ash before touching the ground. And then, silence. For one impossible heartbeat, the chaos froze. The horde, the towers, even the architects, all suspended in stillness, like the world itself held its breath. I could hear only my own pulse hammering in my ears, and Pixel's glow dimming against the void. Then the silence ruptured. The architect's body split down the middle, their voice tearing itself apart. Subject M, B dash dash anomaly dash dash containment dash dash failure dash dash. Their words glitched into nonsense, then into screams. Their colossal frame disintegrated into a storm of letters, fragments of rules slicing through the air like shards of glass. Pixel stumbled back into my arms, trembling, glow flickering like a dying ember. I clutched him close, whispering through the taste of ash, "You're not theirs. Neither am I." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. Because wasn't this collapse, this chaos, also part of their design? What if the choice had never been mine? The Michaels that remained standing turned toward me in eerie unison. Their mouths moved, and my own voice spilled out of them like a curse. One door left. The last tower split. The architect's scream dissolved into silence, and the abyss beyond the fracture yawned open, darker than anything I'd ever seen, pulsing like it had been waiting all along, The floor gave way, and with Pixel in my arms, I fell. The fall ended without warning. One moment the void was dragging me down like an endless pit, and the next I was standing on something that wasn't quite ground. Beneath my feet stretched a surface made of shifting sentences, entire lines of text crawling like worms, glowing faintly, rearranging themselves into patterns I couldn't recognize. The air was cold, void-like, but alive, vibrating with whispers that pressed against my skull as if they were trying to carve themselves directly into my memory. Ahead of me, suspended in the center of that impossible expanse, stood a door. It wasn't wood or metal, not neon like the motel, not glass like the towers. It was older, rawer, a shape that felt less built than grown, stitched together from shadow and light that bled at its edges. Words etched themselves across its surface, fading and reforming, never holding still. Snippets of rules, broken commands, half-finished contracts. At the top frame was a phrase that didn't dissolve. The final door. Below that, letters smeared in crimson formed another warning, one I couldn't look away from. One choice remains. Pixel leapt from my arms and padded toward it, his glow sharpening, casting long streaks of golden light across the crawling text on the floor. For the first time, I noticed how his glow made the whispers around us falter, how the surface beneath his paws stopped shifting when he stepped on it. He froze at the edge of the door, tail flicking, ears flat, his small body trembling with recognition. Something in his eyes told me he knew this place, had always known, even when I didn't. The realization hollowed me out. My companion, my anchor, was not just mine. He belonged to the cycles. The whispers surged again, voices layering over one another until I couldn't tell where one ended and the next began. You opened every door. You followed every rule. Now choose the one beyond rules. They weren't commands anymore, but hunger. Every syllable dripped with anticipation, waiting for me to break. My chest tightened, my legs buckled, and for a moment I thought I might collapse. I clutched the notebook against my ribs, the one that had followed me through every nightmare, and felt it burn against my skin. Its pages fluttered open, though there was no wind, every page blank except the first, the words etched in my own handwriting. If you reach the final door, you will have to decide, rewrite, or remember. I dropped to my knees. The weight of it crushed me harder than any fall, heavier than any rule. This was the ending carved into me from the very beginning. The architects hadn't lied. They had simply hidden the cost. Every death, every rewrite, every nightmare had been guiding me here. My throat ached as I tried to scream, but no sound came. Instead, from the darkness around me, other versions of myself whispered the same phrase back at me like a curse. You agreed. You chose. You wrote this. Pixel's glow flared brighter, breaking through my spiral. He turned his head back to me, eyes locking with mine, and for the second time his voice pierced directly into my skull, not a meow, but words. This is what I am. The sound was steady, sorrowful, but not afraid. My chest tore open with realization. Pixel wasn't just a companion, not just a cat I had rescued. He was the bargain incarnate, the golden thread tying me to the rewrite. His existence was both my salvation and my prison. The door began to open, slowly, its surface groaning like an ancient thing dragged awake. From the crack between its edges spilled light so blinding I staggered back, but within the light writhed shadows, hands clawing forward, faces pressing against the glow, screaming with mouths that had no voices. It wasn't freedom they reached for, it was desperation, hunger, a stampede of memory and identity trying to escape. The whispers crescendoed into one voice, impossibly vast, vibrating through the void. One choice remains. I staggered closer, tears burning down my cheeks, heart battering against my ribs like it wanted out. If I stepped through, I would be rewritten forever. Dissolved into the architects, memory flattened into rule, my life consumed, but Pixel spared. He would live on, not as my cat, but as the guardian of the next cycle, his golden glow passed to another poor subject. But if I turned away, if I remembered, If I chose to shatter this system entirely, the rules would collapse with me. The architects would be undone, the cycles erased, memory restored. But Pixel would die. The thought ripped me apart. He was everything. The only constant, the only warmth, the only proof I hadn't already dissolved into madness. Could I kill him just to win back a life I barely recognized? Could I abandon him to preserve my soul? The door moaned wider, the light burning hotter, shadows screaming louder. The notebook at my chest seared like a brand, words writing themselves in fresh ink across its last page. Subject M. B. Final decision pending. Pixel pressed against the edge of the door, glow spilling into the crack, his small frame outlined in fire. He turned one last time, and I saw it, not fear, not resistance, but trust. His body trembled, his glow flickered, but his eyes said everything his words didn't. Whatever you choose, choose fully. My throat closed, my chest shook, and I wanted to scream that I couldn't, that the choice itself was cruelty, but the void had no mercy left to give. The ground split beneath me, the shifting text unraveling into ash. The void pulled, sucking me toward the door, toward the choice I couldn't escape. The whispers reached their crescendo, hammering in unison until they became one endless word. Choose, choose, choose. My blood pounded, my hands clenched, and I stepped forward. The door's impossible light searing my vision, burning my lungs, tearing through my bones. With Pixel's body pressed against the crack, with every cycle screaming in my ears, I leaned into the glow and whispered the only word I had left.